All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into the Rocky Top Insider postgame show. This is Ryan Shumpert. I am Rick Butler, standing here on the court after Tennessee's 74-56 win over Georgia Southern. Now, Ryan, this was a little bit of an interesting game. Tennessee came out, they built up a large lead at halftime. Second half didn't necessarily go their way, though. The Eagles outscored the Vols 35-25 in the second half. Fortunately for Tennessee, though, that first half lead was enough to kind of keep them at arm's reach. What's your biggest takeaway about today's game?
Yeah, I think it has to be the second half, or certainly the tale of two halves. You worry a little bit about coming off really two bigger games last week. George Mason's a solid team, but especially the Illinois win, a big win about Tennessee maybe coming out flat or lethargic. That wasn't really the case. They 10-0 lead. Jonas Adu scores the first 10 points of the game. They started fast. There was a little bit of sloppiness with the turnovers in the first half, but nothing that really was crazy. They opened up a 28-point halftime lead. They played really well in the first half. And then the second half happened, and to me, it was right up there with North Carolina. The first half of North Carolina is the worst half they've played all season. Not much good things to say about it. Not enough energy, not enough bad defense, bad rebounding, sloppy play on the offensive end of the court. I thought what Rick Barnes said, that they didn't play offense with a purpose in the second half, was a really good point. I mean, the turnovers were obviously a bad note. And the bad shooting or whatever is one thing, but it just didn't feel, like you said, Tennessee played with any sort of purpose on that end of the court.
One other thing that I thought was interesting from Rick Barnes after the press conference was he was kind of asked, hey, what was the most disappointing aspect of that second half for you? And he said, the play of the veterans, the play of Josiah Jordan-James, Santiago Vescovi. Is that sort of what you saw throughout the game as well?
Certainly to a degree. I mean, Josiah Jordan-James got beat on a baseline drive about 5 minutes in the second half right over here. He didn't come back in the game after that, so that's pretty telling.
Yeah.
He didn't come in the last 15 minutes of the game. And Santiago Vescovi, I didn't necessarily notice a lack of energy or necessarily from him, but the stat line, kind of speaks for itself. 0 for 4 shooting, wasn't particularly effective on the offensive end. I thought he had some nice assists in the first half. He was good on the glass again. But yeah, those are the guys that you expect to bring it for Tennessee. And kind of, I thought this guy Ziegler played great in the first half. I want to say he had 1 turnover and 5 assists, and then the second half he has 2 assists, 3 turnovers. So And it just kind of felt like consistently Jonas Adu was the only player that stacked 2 good halves on top of each other for Tennessee.
Yeah, it certainly was. You go back to that turnover number, that ended at 19 on the night for Tennessee.
Season
and certainly
high.
A forgettable number, a season high as well. You also look at the starters who are not named Jonas Adu. They go 5 of 23 for the game. Those 2 guys we just talked about, Josiah and Santiago Vescovi, they combined for just 5 points. A lot of those points on the night, though, you look at Tennessee getting to 74, you say, how did that happen? It's because Jonas Adu was ridiculous for Tennessee here on Tuesday night. He had 29 points, a career high. His last career high came, last game against
7 days ago against George Mason.
Against George Mason. So he is only consistently getting better. He credits confidence from the coaching staff and his teammates, and really in himself as well, for kind of this big production that he has had so far this year. What do you make of Jonas Adu's performance, and how sustainable is it for Tennessee moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, 29 points.
All right, not 29 maybe, but just being one of the more effective guys on the team.
It feels pretty sustainable. I mean, it's what we talked about. I feel like we talked about the last 2 games, but we talked about a lot of the George Mason game. He's just a lot more comfortable. It feels like, and confident on that end of the court. So yeah, to me, it feels sustainable. You got to see it with some level of consistency. I mean, that's kind of been a common theme for this Tennessee program and specific players is what can they get in, game out from them. But certainly there's been a lot of positive themes. I thought he was really good in the pick and roll tonight, and he just continues to seemingly get more confident on that end of the court and seemingly get better on that end of the court. Not only you said he broke his career high in points that he had set last week, he broke it in 14 minutes tonight. So he was, I thought, stout from the start, and maybe not just fantastic in the second half, but he, to me, played much better in the second half than most of Tennessee's team.
Yeah, I would say the same thing as well. Talking about one of the other bright spots from the game for Tennessee is that they got to empty out the bench a little bit more. And that was a conversation coming out of the Illinois game about how Rick Barnes felt like Tennessee's 4 freshmen just did not prepare themselves the right way for that game, so none of them saw action on the court. Today was different, though. Cameron Carr on the court for 10 minutes, Cade Phillips 11 minutes, Freddie DeLeon 8 minutes, and then J.P. Estrella 3:30. So certainly some more combined minutes for the freshmen. What did you think of how they did tonight?
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting development because Tennessee got up so quickly in this game that all those guys got a good bit of playing time. I don't think Estrella played much in the first half. The other 3 all got pretty good minutes in the first half. And then, you expected a game like this, those minutes would come late in the second half, and they all did play some in the second half, but it wasn't like, Rick Barnes was upset that the fact they didn't get to play all of them together for the last 5 minutes of the game because of how poorly they played in the second half as a team. But, I thought those freshmen were good. Cade Phillips, he's not going to do a ton that lights up the stat sheet. I thought he was solid. It does feel like Estrella is kind of behind all those guys a little bit right now, definitely behind Phillips in that big man rotation. And, I liked what Cameron Carr and Freddie DeLeon brought from an energy standpoint and a defensive intensity standpoint. Cameron Carr comes in the game, I think it was his first possession on the defensive end. He blocks a shot. Georgia Southern gets a rebound on it, and he grabs a contested rebound in the possession. So, those are things that are going to get you on the court as a young player for Tennessee. And I thought both those guys looked good. And then you saw a little bit of what DeLeon can do offensively. It was 5 points on back-to-back possessions, a transition basket, and then a corner three right here beside where we're standing. So I thought good signs from those guys. And again, DeLeon's the one that's got the talent to make a big difference on this team if he can put it all together. Yeah. Defense and consistency will be the big thing for him. Rick Barnes seemed to like his preparation going into this game, and certainly defensively, like I said, I thought his energy and intensity was where it needed to be.
Freddie DeLeon with 5 points in the night, and I believe they all came in a little bit of a stretch right there where he scored at the bucket and then came back with a three-pointer back-to-back plays.
Yeah, I think so. Both of them assisted by Zakai Ziegler. Good plays. Ziegler, I think it was a 3-on-2, and he kind of found him as a trailer, and he cut in a nice finish.
You got to admit, there were a couple of really nice feeds inside the paint to the cutting man today. Whether I believe Jonas Adu had one to Jordan
Phillips had one to
Adu. Phillips had one. Yeah. There was some really nice ball movement going down kind of in the paint over here tonight, and that's one of the big takeaways. Tennessee defeats Georgia Southern 74-56. Any other kind of final takeaways as we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll just go off of what you said. I mean, I thought Tennessee played really well in the first half. It wasn't as simple as, Georgia Southern's really bad. Georgia Southern will be the worst team Tennessee plays all season.
0-10 now.
0-10 now, and well into the 300s on Ken Palm. Tennessee, it wasn't just as simple as Tennessee played, pretty solid against a really bad team. I thought Tennessee was really sharp in the first half on both ends of the court. So certainly that is offset by how bad they were in the second half. But to me, it wasn't just like, oh, wow, they played okay, and Georgia Southern was really bad in the first half. It was truly a tell, I thought, of a team that came out with a lot of intensity and the energy they needed, and they just didn't sustain it for 40 minutes.
Yeah, it was. We're going to head back to our work right now. So if you want more on the Tennessee postgame coverage, you can head over to RockyTopInsider.com. Also, we will be recording our next episode of the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast. We'll be doing that on Thursday morning, so be on the lookout for that. We'll be talking a little bit of Tennessee basketball as well as Tennessee football. We got a big bowl game. They got a big bowl game coming up here soon, and that is what is on the horizon for Tennessee. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us here today from Thompson Bowling Arena at the Food City Center. Tennessee defeats Georgia Southern by a score of 74-56. This is Ryan Shumpert. I'm Rick Butler. We'll see you back for the next one.